The movie kicks off by introducing Patrick Kenzie, a former gangster who turned his life around to become a detective. One morning, he finds himself facing a child abduction case that occurred not far from where he lives. The disappearance of Amanda, a 4-year-old girl, quickly grabs media attention, even though there are no witnesses.
I mean, who would take my little girl?
Captain Jack, the head of the police department, vows to solve the case, though Patrick is skeptical of his promises. The next morning, Amanda's uncle and aunt come to see Patrick to ask for help in investigating Amanda's disappearance.
We want to hire you to augment the investigation of Amanda.
Patrick and his girlfriend, Ingeborg, known for their expertise in finding missing people, hesitate to take Amanda's case. Even with their reputation as skilled detectives, Patrick feels unsure about the outcome. Many child abduction cases have ended tragically. After much deliberation, they decide to help with the investigation, despite the emotional and moral challenges it stirs up. When they arrive at Helena's house, Amanda's mom, Patrick, and Angie are met with an indifferent attitude.
Don't you fucking yell at her, Lionel. You ain't her father.
Patrick and Angie visit Helena to gather more details about Amanda's disappearance, but they're shocked to find that Helena seems oddly detached from the situation.
She use drugs?
I think she does a little coke.
How much is a little?
I don't know. A few times a week, maybe. I mean, how much is a lot?
This leaves Patrick questioning just how seriously Helena is taking her daughter's abduction. Shortly after, Captain Jack arrived at the crime scene. Unfortunately, he did not welcome Patrick's presence. He considered this case outside the detective's domain. However, like it or not, legally, because Amanda's aunt and uncle had hired them, Patrick and Angie had the right to know all the developments in Amanda's disappearance case.
We're just trying to help, Captain.
During the day, Patrick visited a bar that Helena often used as a hangout. Unfortunately, the bar owner did not want to give any testimony. Luckily, Patrick's old friend was there, and from here, the truth began to be revealed. Based on her friend's testimony, Helena was a heavy addict. Even the night Amanda disappeared, she was drunk at this bar with her boyfriend.
Remember that night the kid got kidnapped? I saw her on the news, right? She's saying, oh, I was at my neighbor's house for a half hour. Bullshit.
In the middle of the strange conversation, one of the bar visitors was not happy with the investigation into Amanda's disappearance. Not only him, but the owner of the bar also acted the same way. Patrick tried to face this situation with a calm, but they didn't stop insulting, even threatening to rape Angie. Of course, this made Patrick furious.
We're leaving, all right? Open that door, Rummy.
If you ever want to get fucked, let me know.
In the afternoon, Patrick and Angie met two investigators who handled the disappearance of Amanda, named Remy and Poole. Strangely, after 3 days of investigation, the police have not been able to confirm where the little girl is. So far, they only suspect that the perpetrator is a pedophile who happens to have not been released from prison, named Corwin Earl, Leon, and Tret. In addition, they are also drug addicts. However, Patrick denied this because the most likely perpetrator is someone close. Patrick also gave a clue where on the night when Amanda disappeared, Helena was with her lover named Skinny Ray at a bar and using drugs for approximately 2 hours. After that, Patrick and Angie met his friend Bubba, a drug dealer. Their arrival was none other than to ask if he had ever sold drugs to Helena. Bubba replied that he had never sold drugs to Helena. Bubba also gave information that Helena bought drugs from another dealer named Cheese. Not only that, but her lover Ray also worked as a drug courier every day.
You should know better by now. I'm the king of this motherfucking jungle. I'll let you know if I hear anything, though. Thanks, bro.
They immediately used this information to reveal another side of Amanda's disappearance case. After that, Helena was interrogated.
Jean-Baptiste.
Oh, sounds familiar.
Detective Remy was angry to see Helena's uncooperative behavior. But after being pressed so much, Helena finally admitted that some time ago she and her lover had dared to embezzle money from Cheese, the drug dealer. The chronology is quite long, but in essence, Cheese thought his money was confiscated by the police when it was taken and hidden by Helena and her lover. Without wasting time, they headed to Ray's residence, because Helena hid her money at Ray's house. In the middle of the trip, Angie looked very upset by Helena's behavior because, in the situation of her child who was currently missing, she could still joke and laugh, even though it is likely that the loss of her daughter was related to her actions. When they arrived at Ray's residence, they were all shocked by the appearance of Ray, who was covered in blood and lifeless. After seeing Ray's condition, Helena realized how fatal her actions were. Helena hid the stolen money in the yard without Ray's knowledge. No wonder Ray was tortured and then killed because he couldn't tell her where the money was. Because of this case became even more complicated, because it involved a drug dealer, and if it was processed according to existing procedures, Amanda's life would likely be lost. Therefore, rather than threatening Cheese or deploying SWAT, Detective Remy suggested returning the money and exchanging it with Amanda, and Amanda's life was his priority. Helena began to panic and did not expect that her daughter would be kidnapped by a drug dealer. As bad as Helena is, she is still a mother.
No, I fucked up. I just want my daughter back. I swear to God, I won't do no drugs no more.
That night, Patrick had warned the detectives that it was enough for him to negotiate with Cheese. Coincidentally, they both still knew each other. Without saying much, Patrick immediately said that his presence was to return his money and take Amanda. Patrick promised that the police would not investigate this case further. Unfortunately, Cheese pretended to be stupid. It seemed he didn't want to admit it. Because he felt offended, Cheese kicked Patrick and Angie out and threatened them.
Don't ever come in my sport like that. If I see you again, I'm gonna get discourteous on you.
Instead of being afraid, Patrick threatened back. If Cheese didn't want to admit that he was Amanda's kidnapper, it didn't matter. But if he was caught lying, then Patrick promised to use all his money to finish him off later. Their negotiations failed, and Detective Remy blamed Patrick's decision. Maybe if he had gone in, it would have had a different result. The next morning, Cheese suddenly called the police. He said he was ready to hand over Amanda, but the handover procedure had to follow his provisions. As proof that Amanda was still alive, Cheese had time to send a jacket and a letter in front of Patrick's house. Upon Patrick's arrival at the police station, Captain Jack immediately handed over a transcript of the conversation between Detective Remy and Cheese this morning. The plan was for Amanda's exchange to take place tonight at a former mining lake. Cheese was serious about threatening to kill Amanda if the police sent additional troops. Amanda's exchange tonight was confidential, and only the 5 of them knew about it, because honestly, so far, they had violated all existing procedures. But what else could be done as long as Amanda was safe? But Angie thought that something was wrong. It could be that all of this was a trap from Cheese. Then it would be better if they also involved the police and FBI. But suddenly, Captain Jack got angry and started saying that a few years ago his daughter was kidnapped, but because it was not handled properly, the case ended in murder. 1 hour before the meeting time, they were already at the location first. However, Angie kept wondering why Cheese chose a location like this, and strangely enough, the exchange was carried out on 2 different hills. So Detective Remy and his partner would be in charge of handing over the money, while Patrick and his lover would pick up Amanda on the other hill. And when they were in their respective positions, suddenly,
I gotta get Amanda up here.
as a result of the shooting incident, Cheese was shot dead on the spot. But before he died, he had time to throw Amanda into the lake. Without thinking twice, Angie immediately jumped into the lake to make sure whether Amanda was still alive or not. Unfortunately, until the end, Amanda's body was not found. Amanda's death was the responsibility of Captain Jack. He was even forced to resign from the police because he was caught carrying out an operation outside the existing procedure. In addition, Amanda's death also left a deep wound because until the end, her body was never found. As someone who participated in solving this case, Angie felt tremendous regret. Worse still, 2 months after Amanda's death, there was another kidnapping case of a child named Pietro, and not long after the kidnapping case occurred, Baba suddenly approached Patrick at a bar. Just so you know, the last time they met, Patrick had given 3 photos of a former convict who was suspected of kidnapping Amanda. Well, the 3 people were drug addicts, so Patrick asked Baba for help in tracking their whereabouts. Upon arriving at the house in question, Baba insisted on continuing the drug transaction inside the house because he was starting to get high. Leon and his wife followed all of Baba's requests. Baba took the opportunity to comb every corner of the room inside. But strangely enough, when he was about to try to go up to the second floor, Leon's wife suddenly pointed a gun at him. "Let me introduce the man on the second floor, Corwin, and he is a pedophile who is highly sought after by the government. What's worse is that Corwin's hand has a bracelet that looks like Piedro's. That's why that night, Patrick immediately asked for help from Detective Remy to confirm his curiosity. Unfortunately, when they were about to act suddenly, Detective Remy's partner was seriously injured, and his life was likely beyond saving.
Listen to me! An all-police officer has been shot at 33 German Road.
The problem is that the feud is not over yet, and because he was forced to, Patrick went inside to check on Detective Remy's condition. However, as soon as the door was opened, Tret didn't stop shooting, so Patrick immediately fled upstairs. Unfortunately, he didn't expect that in the room there was a very heartbreaking scene. It turned out that Piedro had been kidnapped by them all this time. What's worse is that the boy was killed in a very brutal way. That's why Patrick couldn't hold himself back and immediately shot the perpetrator. Strangely, Patrick felt a great sense of regret. However, in terms of religion, what Patrick had done earlier was an inappropriate action. He tried to convey that to Detective Remy. But it turns out they have different views. In essence, sometimes they have to do something outside the procedure so they can get real justice. But there is something odd about the story. If you pay close attention, Detective Remy said that Helena's boyfriend Ray had worked for him as an informant for the past 15 years. But strangely, when they first met, Detective Remy pretended not to know Ray at all. That means that from the start there was something the police were trying to hide from Amanda's disappearance. Long story short, a few days later they all attended the funeral of Detective Poole, and there was also Detective Remy. Patrick tried to approach him and mentioned the conversation last night, but Detective Remy looked panicked and asked Patrick to forget everything he said yesterday. Patrick's curiosity was getting worse, so he immediately dug up Detective Remy's past from a police officer who happened to have been friends with him for a long time. Here a truth was revealed again. In essence, according to information from an insider from the beginning, Detective Remy had known that Ray and Helena had robbed Cheese's money. Remy got the information from his colleague who was in charge of narcotics. The question is, if Detective Remy had known it from the start, why did he pretend to interrogate Helena again? And from here, Patrick finally realized who kidnapped Amanda. Meanwhile, Amanda's uncle looked panicked when Patrick called him and asked for time to talk privately. After investigating, Amanda's uncle had a fairly large role in Amanda's disappearance, but until now, we have not been explained what his motive was. That afternoon, they finally met at a bar, and without further ado, Patrick immediately demanded that Lionel tell the truth. It turned out that from the start he and Remy had known each other and had conspired to kidnap Amanda to get the money stolen by Helena, but the question is whether the motive was really that simple. To be able to tell the story, Lionel drank several glasses of alcohol, and from here he explained the chronology. A week before Amanda was declared missing, Lionel happened to be putting Amanda to bed. Then Helena and her lover appeared. They both looked panicked after stealing Cheese's money. He immediately conveyed this information to Remy. From there, they both set up a strategy to be able to seize the stolen money that Helena had hidden. Unfortunately, their plan went awry because a few hours after Amanda disappeared, Lionel's wife immediately invited the media crew and hired Patrick's services to find her. So that Patrick would not be suspicious, Detective Remy was forced to make Cheese the scapegoat. The night when the Amanda exchange transaction took place, Cheese came there because he was promised to get his money back, even though Remy had collaborated with his subordinate named Chris. The point is that all the money from their robbery will be divided equally. Unfortunately, when they arrived at the location, Cheese suddenly put up a fight. Meanwhile, Amanda ran towards the lake. In the middle of the conversation at the bar, a robber suddenly appeared. But it felt very strange considering that this criminal act occurred in the afternoon, And the funny thing is that the robber seemed to only target Lionel. And this is where Patrick realized that the masked man was Detective Remy. He came to make sure Lionel didn't open his mouth. Unfortunately, it was too late. In a seriously injured state, Detective Remy tried to escape upstairs, but Patrick managed to chase him. It seems that the shot had hit Detective Remy's vital organs. In the last moments, Patrick had time to question why Remy had the heart to kidnap Amanda for money, even though all this time he claimed to be a protector of a small child. But that question was only answered like this.
I love children.
Detective Remy's death raised many questions. The police even interrogated Patrick at length to explain the chronology of Amanda's kidnapping, because so far none of the police in the office knew about Amanda's negotiation process 2 months ago. The 2 detectives who handled the case were also dead, while Captain Jack resigned. Therefore, to prove his words, Patrick asked the police to check the transcript of the conversation between Remy and Cheese. But suddenly the police said that they never made any transcripts if there was an incoming call to the office number. If so, then the transcript given by Walk 2 is fake. Finally, Patrick realized the real motive for Amanda's kidnapping, because the next day Patrick and his lover visited Captain Jack's residence. When they arrived there, Amanda suddenly appeared. Since the beginning, Amanda's death had indeed been faked. Everyone had conspired so that Amanda could be free from her mother, who was a drug addict. But all these ideas came from Amanda's uncle himself. Based on the story, last year, Amanda was invited by Helena to the beach. But when she arrived there, Amanda was left in the car for 3 hours, and Helena was busy using drugs. As a result, Amanda became dehydrated. Hearing that story, Remy became annoyed and started planning a strategy. Coincidentally, Captain Jack had long wanted to adopt a child. Initially, Patrick threatened to tell the police if Jack did not return Amanda. The problem is that he was hesitant whether revealing this case would end well or end up destroying Amanda's future, because right now Amanda looks very happy and is surrounded by people who sincerely love her. However, Patrick remembered his promise to Helena 2 months ago, that no matter what happens, Amanda would be brought home. Well, the problem is that Patrick's decision was opposed by Angie, because she thought that revealing this case would destroy Amanda's future. Even if Patrick stuck to his decision, Angie threatened to end their relationship. Captain Jack was immediately secured by the police, while Amanda was returned to her mother in front of dozens of journalists. Helena had time to express her gratitude and advised every mother out there not to carelessly entrust their children. At the same time, Patrick had to bear the risk, and now he and Angie have officially separated. Long story short, a few days later, Patrick came to Helena's residence just to make sure of Amanda's condition. But when he arrived there, Helena was seen getting ready to go on a date with a foreign man she had just met from the internet. And while Helena was away, the plan was to leave Amanda with a neighbor who was a drug addict too. It seems that after all this incident, Helena has not changed. Many people think that Patrick has regretted his decision. But what do you think? Try to comment in the comments column below. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks, guys.